Okay, so we're diving into creative education today.
Yeah,
Sounds kind of catchy, but what is it really?
right.
Well, we've got our hands on some really interesting material straight from Israel.
hmm
It's all in Hebrew, of course, so lucky for you, we're going to break it all down.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff. They're not afraid to shake things up over there.
That's one way to put it. I mean, they're practically dismantling the whole traditional education system and rebuilding it from the ground up.
Well, they'd probably say it's about time.
Haha, probably. But seriously, the sense of urgency in these materials is palpable.
Absolutely. They were talking about a complete paradigm shift, not just like adding a few more computers to classrooms.
Right. It's like they took a good hard look at the 21st century and said, hold up, this whole prepare for the real world spiel, not cutting it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have this really striking way of describing what they see happening in traditional schools. They call it intelligence covered in dust.
Wow. Intelligence covered in dust. Okay, that's a powerful image.
Right.
It's like all this potential is just sitting there, buried under outdated methods and expectations.
hmm
So their answer to this dusty intelligence problem is something they call creative education, or as they sometimes refer to it in these materials, dual humanistic education.
And that's where things get really interesting.
All right, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. Dual humanistic education, what's that all about?
So dual humanistic, it refers to the two main pillars of this approach.
Okay.
On one hand, you have the humanistic part, which is all about nurturing the individual's creative potential.
Makes sense, helping students tap into their own unique talents and passions.
Exactly. And then you have the dual part, which focuses on practical skills and vocational training.
Vocational training. So we're talking like shop class, learning a trade.
Well, it's vocational training, but not as you might traditionally think of it. This is where they really flip the script.
Okay, now you've got me really curious. How is their approach to vocational training different?
Think of it this way. Traditional vocational training often focuses on preparing students for very specific jobs, often in the trades.
Right, like plumbing or carpentry.
Exactly. But dual humanistic education takes a much broader approach. It's about equipping individuals with a versatile skill set that goes beyond just knowing how to, say, fix a car or build a cabinet.
So it's less about here's how you do this one specific thing and more about here's how you approach any problem, analyze it, and come up with a creative solution.
Now you're getting it. It's about fostering those adaptable, transferable skills that are becoming so essential in today's world. Problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and of course, creativity in all its forms.
This is already making me rethink my own education. So how does this actually play out in the classroom? I mean, are we talking about apprenticeships, hands-on projects? Give me the inside scoop.
That's where it gets even more interesting. They're talking about restructuring the entire educational experience around real-world, project-based learning.
Okay, color me intrigued. Tell me more about how they're actually bringing this vision to life.
So picture this, instead of kids stuck at desks, just memorizing facts and figures,
Right.
they're actually out there tackling real-world projects like designing products or developing business plans.
Wow, that's a big difference. So they're not just learning about stuff in theory, they're actually doing it.
Exactly. They're putting their knowledge to the test, getting their hands dirty, so to speak.
I like that, getting their hands dirty. But does that mean they're ditching traditional classrooms and textbooks altogether?
Not necessarily. Think of it more as a remix.
A remix. Okay, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, so they're keeping some of the familiar elements, but using them in a totally new way.
Give me an example.
Sure, so instead of just reading about, say, the American Revolution from a textbook,
Right.
students might work together to research, write, and even perform a play about it.
Oh, wow. That would definitely make history come alive.
Exactly. It's about making learning active and engaging, not just passive absorption of information.
So it sounds like creativity isn't just for art class anymore. They're really emphasizing it across all subjects.
Absolutely. And this is where that humanistic aspect of dual humanistic education really comes into focus.
Okay, remind me again, what was the humanistic part all about?
It's about cultivating the whole person, their creativity, their critical thinking skills, their emotional intelligence. It's about producing adaptable, well-rounded individuals, not just workers with a narrow set of skills.
Right. Because in today's world, things change so quickly. You need to be able to adapt, think outside the box.
Exactly. And that's what creative education's all about.
It all sounds great in theory, but I'm sure there are challenges. I mean, how do you even begin to measure the effectiveness of something like this?
That's a great question. It's definitely not as straightforward as just looking at standardized test scores.
Right, because how do you give someone a grade for creativity or problem solving?
Exactly. So they're exploring alternative assessment methods, things like project portfolios, presentations, even peer evaluations.
Interesting. So it's about looking at the whole picture, not just one narrow measure of success.
Precisely. And this also means rethinking the role of teachers.
Oh, that's right. How are teachers adapting to this new approach? It must require a pretty significant shift in mindset.
Absolutely. They're providing teachers with extensive training and support, encouraging them to become more like facilitators or mentors rather than just lecturers.
So it's about guiding students as they discover and learn, not just telling them what to think.
Exactly. And it's not just about what happens within the school walls either. Remember that ladder program we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah, the mentorship program that connects students with professionals in different fields.
Right. That's a prime example of how they're bridging the gap between school and the real world.
So instead of just reading about a career, students can actually experience it firsthand. That's amazing.
It is. And it benefits everyone involved. Students gain valuable skills and connections, while professionals get to mentor the next generation.
It's a win-win. But it sounds like they're not just focused on, like, career prep. They're also really emphasizing the importance of community and social responsibility.
Absolutely. They want students to become active, engaged citizens, not just cogs in a machine.
I like that. But how do they actually make sure that happens? I mean, it's one thing to say you value social responsibility, but how do you actually cultivate it in students?
Well, for one thing, they're encouraging schools to create more inclusive and supportive environments. They want students to feel valued, respected, and empowered to make a difference.
That makes sense, because if you don't feel like you belong, you're probably not going to be too worried about the well-being of your community.
Exactly. And they're also promoting things like service learning projects.
Oh, yeah, where students apply what they're learning to real-world problems.
It's about giving them a chance to make a tangible difference in their communities using the skills and knowledge they're developing.
So it's not just theoretical. They're actually out there making a difference.
Precisely. And all of this ties back to that core idea of dual humanistic education, nurturing both practical skills and those essential human qualities like empathy and compassion.
It's really a holistic approach to education, but I'm sure some people are wondering, with all these changes, how do they even know if it's working?
Well, they're not just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. They're taking a very data-driven approach to all of this.
So they're tracking everything, looking at the results.
Absolutely. They're measuring things like student engagement, academic performance, even long-term outcomes like career success and civic participation.
Wow, that's impressive. And what are they finding?
The early results are very promising. You're seeing positive trends in student motivation, engagement, even academic achievement, especially in subjects that haven't always been seen as the most exciting.
That's great to hear. It sounds like they might be onto something truly transformative here.
I think so. They're challenging the status quo, rethinking the very purpose of education. It's a bold experiment, but one that I think has the potential to change the world.
It's definitely given us a lot to think about. This deep dive into creative education has been eye-opening, to say the least.
It really has, and it makes you wonder, what if more countries were willing to take these kinds of risks to really rethink how we educate the next generation?
What kind of world could we create if we prioritize creativity, collaboration, and real-world problem solving? Something to ponder.
Absolutely. Something to ponder indeed.